Welcome to PDX Black Rose Podcast. I'm Alex Gebreab, the Small Business Navigator, and I'm here with my co-host, John Washington, Executive Director of the Soul District, and Fawn Aberson, Program Director of the Soul District. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Keith Wilson, President and CEO of Titan Freight Systems and a candidate for Portland Mayor. Keith Wilson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
hey,
it's a
Fawn.
pleasure,
Hi, John.
Keith. Oh,
Great
man. Hey,
here.
Keith, I appreciate you coming in and saying hi to us, Hey, y'all. So Keith is here with us today, and let me tell you something. This should be an exciting show. This gentleman, when he came to us and when I met him for the first time and I started listening to him, I said, man, okay, I don't know if any of these other candidates are uncomfortable, but I am a little bit uncomfortable right about now because this man sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So, Keith, do me a little bit, man. I mean, your background is kind of impressive, man. Tell us a little bit about you. You've been in the media game, a major transportation company pushing for high-speed rail, which is something that we were working with, too, back in the day. I'm glad it's still around. And, having a unique perspective on mayoral race. We're eager to dive into some of your priorities and plans addressing the critical issues of our community, Keith. So tell us a little bit about your background, man. Who are you? Where you come from, man? How you get here?
All right. Thank you, John. John,
Yeah.
it's so great to be in this conversation. I have respected what you've done and the work you've done for your community.
Appreciate you, man.
And Fawn and Alex, it's great to be here. Yeah. So my name is Keith Wilson. I'm a candidate for mayor, and my focus is to deliver real change for Portland. We can't accept the failures that we've seen occur in our city any longer. Our city is a mess. I have a plan to end unsheltered homelessness in the first 12 months of my administration. And when we accomplish that, John, we decrease crime immediately. We increase our economic development immediately. And we improve livability for everybody, both the unhoused and the housed. That's what we do our first year because we can't accept the status quo any longer in our city. We need real change. So I wanted to start with why am I here in the first place running for mayor? And that is that critical first point I want everybody to know. But going back in time, John, if you want
I need to know a little bit about this guy that I'm going to say,
So,
we want you to be mayor, but where did he come from? Is he just showed up from Yugoslavia or somewhere? Not that I got anything against Yugoslavians,
We could start talking Yugoslavian then. So I grew up in North Portland. I've got deep roots there. I grew up in a 900 square foot home, 2 bedrooms with 7 of us. So I always look at you picture the
you one-upped me on that one.
It's amazing. I always kind of laugh about it. So I saw a couple squirrels, just young squirrels, chasing each other on the tree. That was what it was like in my house every day. It was tight, but it was wonderful. I had a mom and dad that worked as hard as humanly possible. They were working different jobs. Mom was an Avon lady, so all 5 of the kids, we would be sorting it on the Sunday when the box would arrive on Saturday, and that's what we did. And so I had the best smelling hands after moving all that freaking. But my dad and my brothers never graduated from high school, so it was a low expectation on education. I lived a block away from the Columbia Villa, so it was a really good neighborhood. It was poor, but we were a really tight knit neighborhood.
Yeah, that was a hood.
I went to Portsmouth Middle and Cesar Chavez School there. But I graduated from high school, so that's the first milestone. And then I never wanted to stop. I went off and I paid my way through college, so I ended up at Oregon State, graduated there. Picked up my stakes, always been a bit of a wanderlust, wanted to see what was out there. And so my first job was in New York City, working at 30 Rock for NBC in network television. I did that for 3 years, did really well there. And then I picked up stakes again and I moved overseas and I lived and I worked for 2 years and traveled the world.
Wow.
I ended up in New Zealand, living in a city called Auckland, and it reminded me of Portland, but it was halfway around the world. And so after living in some of the most beautiful cities and the most extraordinary cities of the world, and then living in Auckland, I thought, why do I want to live in a city that looks like Portland but doesn't have my family and friends and isn't Portland anymore?
Wow.
And I will tell each and every one of you right now and all the listeners, in this world, there is no better or more beautiful city than Portland. So let's work for it. But
and you're not the first one to say that, man, and I agree with it myself. And traveling the world, you can't find a more beautiful place, man.
Yeah. So I came back here. was starting to, get back into network television. And then my father had his financial statements on the dining room table. He delivered luggage from the airport when you and your parents flew in. He was the guy and his 2 partners. So he had a small package business, and I saw the financial statement, the numbers, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've been running from numbers my whole life. And it just like sang to me. And he said, well, you want to come and try it? And I did, and I loved it. And then I just started learning and doing more. Went back to University of Portland, right?
My
old hood.
Yeah.
Got a master's degree.
Come on.
Went and then eventually got a certification in Lean Six Sigma, which is an advanced statistics and Lean Six Sigma. It's a high-level process improvement, waste removal. Alex knows what I'm talking about. And then I started building this business, and we are arguably the best transportation company in the nation now. We have the lowest workforce injury rate in the state.
Congratulations.
We have one of the lowest crash ratings in the nation. I use artificial intelligence to help our drivers out. Today in Portland, we don't use 1 single gallon of fossil fuels in a trucking company.
Wow.
Not one. So we have one of the lowest carbon footprints in the nation. And then last year, we received the first fleet of heavy-duty electric trucks in the Northwest and arguably in the nation. So we've done all this advanced systems improvement, some incredible emissions reduction, take care of my staff. But here's why I'm here. About 6 years ago, I started raising my head up, and I'm encircled by this wonderful group of men and women that we've really been able to train and be extraordinary. And I looked around my city, and I don't recognize it anymore. We have thousands of people living on the street. We have hundreds that are going to die this year. So I started traveling around the nation, which I have that privilege to do, working with federal officials and some of the boards that I work on and such. And I started meeting mayors, county officials, and federal officials. And I started learning best practices on how those communities ended unsheltered homelessness. You go to Boston, Philadelphia, Boise, New Orleans, you're not going to see tent encampments. So I started befriending all the mayors, and they started helping me with a blueprint. So I created this nonprofit called Shelter Portland. Those 10 national leaders are on my leadership council here in Portland.
Oh, wow.
They vetted the plan on how we're going to end unsheltered homelessness. Now I have 6 executive directors who are of the largest homeless service providers in Portland. They're going to help me execute the plan. And it's really quite simple. In most cities around the nation, except for Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, or LA, they utilize nighttime emergency shelters. Extremely low cost, but very focused on life-saving and caring for their community. And so I started really partnering with nighttime shelters and setting them up myself and sleeping in shelters and creating shelters myself, because that's how you learn. If you're going to innovate,
you slept in the shelters yourself?
Yeah. So here's let me segue for a moment. So one of the companies that is suffering the most from unsheltered homelessness is TriMet. Their ridership numbers have plummeted. People feel unsafe riding TriMet. So I called Doug Kelsey, the past general manager, and Sam Dessou, the current general manager. I said, gentlemen, I have a friend in Brisbane, Australia, who's been repurposing parking garages into shelters. I want to try it here. And you know what they said? Go. Our ridership number is plummeting. We have to do something different.
Wow.
So I set up a shelter, and it worked. Only at night, had security, and then we tried it in the middle of winter, and oh my God, did it fail. Because it was 15 degrees on the night we tried it in winter, and it was terrible. But that's how you learn. That's how that's how great innovation occurs. You try, you fail fast, you improve, and you try again. So then a friend has a church. He's a pastor. And I said, I want to borrow your church just at night. So it's an asset. And, you know, these churches and congregation levels are falling. But those roofs still need to be repaired. The paint still needs to be painted on the side. So he let me borrow his shelter. We set up a pop-up shelter just at night, and it worked. I brought in homeless souls to help advocate how did it work, and they told me a bunch of stuff that I did wrong. And then we started using it, and we had a shelter this past winter. Union Gospel Mission was the operator. Church of Nazarene was the church, and then I partnered, and where I could fundraise, I paid rent. And it's amazing. Everybody won, and we had 45 people in there, and it worked only at night. So we're going to set up a network of nighttime shelters in assets that are already operational. We can do it within months, but that's only one half. I always say that's the first inning. Saving people's lives at night is part of the 5 S's. Safety and security, shelter and sleep are the first 4. The 5th S is services. So I opened a day shelter 8 weeks ago in Montevilla on 82nd Avenue in Ash. The day shelters.
I saw that one.
Yeah, the day shelter is important because just providing help and life-saving support at night, yes, we need that. We can't have women in a tent in a horrific circumstance at midnight being harmed and in some cases raped. Absolutely inhumane. A city that hands out tents is a city that's failing, and that's Portland.
Tired of high gas prices? Save money on your transportation costs with TriMet's reduced fare transit card. If you meet income requirements, you can get your first month free while you enjoy unlimited rides on buses and trains anywhere TriMet goes. That's 1 month free, a $28 value when you sign up today for TriMet's reduced fare card. We'll help you travel smarter and make your money go further no matter what the price is at the pump. Visit TriMet.org/save to learn more and apply today. That's TriMet.org/save. TriMet. How life moves.
So let's talk about the current system in place or that they've
Sure.
been worked on, right? Because they did make 6 encampment territories,
little
right?
homes, mini
And
homes, all
they've
that kind
got
of stuff.
some kind of joint office of homeless, a communication channel. So is what you're doing going to be in collaboration with that? Are you going to shake up that system? Or are you adding this to that system? How does that work?
That's a great question. So everything I'm talking about it's called accretive or addition. So the Safe Rest villages are those 6 tiny pod villages. You have temporary alternative shelters, which is the new solution, and those are 200 pods or 160 pods. All that remains. Because what happened last year was we added one of those pods location, just one last year, 160 pods. Last year we grew unsheltered homelessness 900 people.
Wow.
We're going backwards. Every year we delay. So what we do, Fawn, is we set up these nighttime emergency shelters at a level in which to end unsheltered homelessness. So then we enforce our no camping codes. We enforce our RVs if they're not registered, licensed, or if
No
they're not
public
insured,
drug
they have to
use.
go away. We enforce our no makeshift shelter laws. And so we're going to bring thousands of those individuals inside. But, that's why I've been working with mayors. May I tell you a story about the mayor of
Come
Boise?
on, man. Tell us what you
So
need.
there's this law called Martin versus Boise. And the mayor of Boise lost it in 2018. And it requires that mayor, all mayors, to set up the number of shelters that meet the level of the unsheltered souls on the street. You can't enforce your codes unless you have as many shelter beds as there are people on the street.
Right.
So he lost the case, and no sooner did he lose the case, he had 120 tents around City Hall in Boise. Just like that.
Wow.
He called in the fire, called in the police, his homeless service providers. He said, hey, ladies and gentlemen, why do I have these tents outside of City Hall? Well, Mr. Mayor, we lost that court case. He said, we lost that court case, but we didn't lose our ability to care for our citizens.
Wow.
You're going to have 120 beds set up in 30 days. So he went to his homeless service providers. They had overflow beds and tent beds, and they did it. And in 30 days, they did a countdown from day 30 to 0. He knew every single person in that encampment. They broke the encampment. He says, here's what happens, Keith, when you allow tent encampments. 40 went back home. Cheyenne, Portland, Salt Lake City, Missoula. He said 40 went back home locally because when you allow a tent to be a destination, you're drawing people from the housed locally as well. He said, I had to provide 40 beds out of 120. He says, that's what's going to happen in Portland. But by law, I have to set up those 4,000 beds or 5,000 beds, however many I need. But we don't want to build 5,000 beds because that's $200 million in infrastructure.
Right.
But if we just take 12, 16, 20 nighttime emergency shelters, community centers, churches. I'm working with Salvation Army to provide the Moore Street.
Wow.
We can set these up immediately like it's an earthquake, like it's an emergency, a disaster. Because when someone
so-
dies on the street, it's a disaster.
So I guess my question in regards to that is 12 months is super ambitious.
Absolutely.
Super aggressive. And then it sounds like you want to continue to build these shelters, but what about like the underlying issues, right? Are you going to keep these people in these shelters forever?
No, so
Right? How do we keep people from going into those?
Yeah, what's the continuum of care and service?
Great question. And this is the missing part of the continuum, by the way. Because when you have people living on the street, that's not a part of our housing continuum. Let's be clear. We're failing when we have people on the street.
Right.
So your question was, okay, how do we set them up? So we set it up immediately within a few months. We have to do it within a few months because to meet Martin versus Boise, you can't go halfway or you're going to let people still camp and they're going to just be moved away. And 35% of everybody in Portland are what's called homeless upon arrival, Alex. In other words, they were homeless in some other jurisdiction.
Right.
But because we hand out tents here,
Right.
we're drawing individuals from outside the community. Just
Right.
like the
Yeah.
Mayor Beater said. He said they went back to Portland, Cheyenne, and Wyoming. He says, when you allow encampments, so we have to stop the inflow. We do that by setting up the nighttime shelters. Basically, if you're coming to Portland, you're going to participate in our community. We'll help you with jobs. Now, you said, how's the continuum? That's where the day shelters come in. The day shelters are work training, workforce development, recovery, mental health access, and then we're going to work people into housing. Think of a foster care kid that aged out at 17 who doesn't even know how to fill out a checkbook.
And is that going to be a prerequisite to be in those shelters?
No.
Is that
these
going to be a
are all
requirement?
elective. Everything is at a personal autonomy. So the point is you can't be in a tent, you can't be in an RV, and you can't be in a makeshift shelter. Now, you can choose what you want to do. But Alex, do you know, in a normal functioning society, in an unsheltered environment, or in a homeless community, generally 53% of the people go to their jobs the next day. We tend to think that homelessness, but when you're living in a car or an RV, some people are going to work.
Yeah.
We can't have them in tents. You're not going to get back into a stable workforce or life routine or housing, living in a tent trying to go to jobs. But a lot of those individuals are serving our coffee, our meals, and we're allowing them to be in tents. We can do so much better. So it's in addition to the continuum, John.
Yeah.
It's a missing part to the continuum, and it's what's being done in Boise, in Philadelphia, in Boston tonight.
You know, Keith, you scary. I'm gonna tell you why you're scary. You're scary because you put your hands on the product.
Absolutely.
You know, and
John.
that's what's really exciting, I think, at this. But you allude to a couple of things. You alluded to this aspect about the beacon. Okay, about those tents being an attraction. But it was ironic because this morning I was thumbing through some of my news channels trying to get to CNN, and I happened to stumble on Fox, which I usually don't stumble on Fox. When they say Fox, I keep on running, right? But it just so happened this morning as I decided to listen just for a second I don't know what made me take my hand off that box, that thing I had in my hand to change the channels. I heard it say, Portland is doing something a little different. They're re-legalizing drugs. I mean, not really. They're stopping they're banning the legalization of some of these substances and things of that nature. But those were also beacons, right? The things that attracted people here for the same reason that sort of exacerbated or put a pressure on the system itself. And what I'm liking about you, Keith, at this point in time, you're getting your hands dirty. You're sticking your hands in the product. You're looking at it, and you're checking it out. Unlike most of the other candidates, they may know the principles from an obscure or distance, but I see you're in there putting your hands on it. So what are you thinking about the putting a ban on legalizations and all those things? What's your thoughts about how the impact? Because I'm asking you that not only from a public safety standpoint of view, but how are we really going to address the mental health issues, especially when we're targeted on the fentanyl, housing, but all of these topics are somehow or another a dependency model. And what I'm sort of beginning to hear you talk a little bit about is how do we get those models to become a moving process, not something that's rooted someplace where the policies and the laws are allowing them to stay put, but somehow or another putting systems together that are moving the process or moving people through a process instead of investing in dependency models. What are your thoughts about investment in dependency models when it comes to people and people moving from poverty to empowerment?
Okay. So, John, let me unpack that. First of all, shelter is the solution. We can't have people on the street because they're suffering from mental illness, addiction, and it's not being addressed, first and foremost. So let's talk about that. Now, you talked about the innovation, and I appreciate that. I've always thought to innovate, you got to go understand, and to understand, you got to go and see. That's why I've been sleeping in shelters and working with homeless individuals, addicted individuals, and mental health. Our system and our city and county are failing. That's clear. Because they're overwhelmed. Our police are overwhelmed because half of every arrest is an unsheltered person.
Yep.
1 out of every 2 arrests our police officer is doing is an unsheltered.
Wow.
And they make up 1% of our population. So they're overloaded. Our medical and our mental health and addiction services are overloaded because we're a beacon. There are a host of reasons why everybody is on the street.
I'm sorry, that was an interesting fact. Half of our arrests are unsheltered people, but they're less than 1% of our population?
Yeah. So
wow.
Unsheltered population is between 4,000 or 5,000. We have a 600,000, and so they represent 1%. Yet 1 out of every 2 arrests in the city of Portland is an unsheltered person. So how do we right-size our behavioral health system and addiction? First of all, the police are arresting the wrong people. Provide basic nighttime shelter, stabilize. Mental health, John, somebody living in a tent, is it really mental health or is it survival mode? Because they look exactly the same. When you're trying to get your next meal or trying to stay up at night from being attacked or harmed, what is it? Bring them into nighttime shelters. Some people are going to come out of survival mode and they're going to be rational and ready for services. But, John, here's the problem. When you have a third of the individuals arriving to Portland from outside of our community, overwhelming our already poor performing mental health and addiction services because they're overwhelmed, end the shelter homelessness, stop the inflow, and allow our mental health system and addiction to at least play catch up.
Right.
And then, John, though, we have the money we need to fund through Multnomah County because they're in charge of health and human services. Then we have a fighting chance to take the funding they have to deliver well-delivered services to those individuals. Understand, it's an ecosystem. It's service improvement. Alex, you looked at me when I said that I have an advanced certification in Lean Six Sigma. It's one of the most advanced certification with waste reduction, right? So I understand bottlenecks. We can't have people living on the street because our police are overwhelmed. When our police are overwhelmed, their response times are compromised. They don't show up when we need them. It also means our mental health system's overwhelmed and our addiction system is overwhelmed. We had 900 people move to Portland, or we had 900 people more unsheltered last year than we did the year before. Are we going to be able to ever catch up with mental health or addiction services? They're constantly overwhelmed. So we need to stop the inflow from people that are housed into a tent. Just provide basic nighttime
Where are they coming
shelter.
from for the external people that are coming in? Majority, what's the data say? Where are they coming from?
Okay, so 35% of everybody in Multnomah County, Portland, are homeless upon arrival. So they're going to be from Oregon. They could be from Clark County. But 21% are from out of state. We have the highest homeless upon arrival of any other jurisdiction I've been able to research in the United States. So
California? Is it California?
California's a big one. But let me anecdotally tell you this.
HOA, homeless
Iowa.
on arrival.
Check this out, Alex. Let me tell you the story. So I hate urban legends. You don't know if they're true or not. So I've been riding with police about once every month. I go out with police officers, and I was with Amelia and CJ about 4 months ago. We arrested a guy at the Veracats Esplanade. He had just arrived from Florida, license plate Florida, 2012 registration. So it's not even, it's not insured. We arrest the guy because he's got a warrant for his arrest in Florida. We call the DA while we're on the Esplanade because they don't want to take him to the jail and waste time. The DA says from Florida, where's he at? He's in Portland? Oh, no, I don't want him back. No, you're good.
Keep
I'm
him.
thinking, all right,
Yeah.
problem number one. Then I asked the guy, because we unhandcuffed him, hey, it looks like we're not going to serve the warrant, but of course we're going to arrest him again in 2 days when another officer meets him, because by law they're supposed to arrest anybody with a warrant. So again, police are going to waste time again. So I start talking to the guy like, hey man, how did you get that RV? It's like 30, 40-year-old RV. How did you get that cross country to Portland? He says, well, it was hard. We got stopped. I said, well, yeah, it's not registered. I assume you're not insured. No. He said, in Tennessee, it was the most difficult. They were really mean. Well, what do you mean? He said, I got pulled over and they arrested me there. But then when I told them I was going to Oregon, they let me go. So Alex,
this is the mecca for all the...
Is officers aren't going to encumber their public safety system if somebody's going to leave their jurisdiction. Do you understand that? So we're talking to that guy, and Amelia's off with the girl saying, hey, do you want housing? Do you really want this lifestyle? Trying to separate them. And she's like, yeah, I'll think about it. But he came back. And then the guy says, hey, where am I supposed to park? And the officers gave them parking instructions. And I pulled CJ and Amelia to the side to say, hey, I own a transportation company. I know I get hit a lot by uninsured vehicles. And by law, we have them towed. Because I don't want an uninsured vehicle on the road harming you or my kids. So I have them always towed. You're supposed to tow that, CJ and Amelia. Well, we don't, because our city leaders tell us, because we don't have enough beds in our shelter, because of Martin versus Boise, we can't enforce our codes, and we consider the RV a private residence.
Well, yeah, and that's why
Oh,
there
yeah,
were so
and
many
then-
RVs
Yeah,
around.
I'll tell you right now, and it's like
that's what I was gonna.
it's like a
It's their residence.
a game, you know.
It's, yeah, fun.
Lombard is a major street in our district here in the Soul District, and just every couple of weeks it's lined with trailers. And of course, yesterday I was coming to work, major accident, right, because of the trailers along the side of the road, and it's just like a rotating,
That's right.
like spigot, and like there's no, it doesn't feel like permanent solutions are
No,
happening. And then
it's
how they
not.
collaborate together, because this was like a road like 20 trailers,
And
right?
some of these are parked in front of homes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Where people
Oh
pay
my goodness.
people
Property
pay property
taxes.
taxes, right?
Yeah.
to
I
the
mean,
$8 billion
anywhere-
budget of the
I
city
mean,
of
like
Portland.
mines went from 5,000 to 8,000 in like 5 years, right? But there's RVs parked in front of them. I guess I don't know where that money's going towards that. But my question is, so who's responsible for putting out this bat signal saying, "Hey, welcome to Oregon," to all the the people that are coming in here from places like you say where Tennessee sees somebody like that and they go, "Oh, okay, please keep going to Oregon."
So let me first off by say I'm not xenophobic. If you're in Portland, I'm going to care for every Portlander. But if you're in Portland, you're not going to compromise our laws. Our regulations have to apply, but for both the unhoused and the housed. So let me say. So you said, why are they coming here? I don't want to speak to that because addiction drives people's behavior and mental health crisis. But if you're addicted, you're looking for the easiest way out. It's a behavior issue. And so I got to think that in some cases, you're not moving to Portland unless there's a reason. So I do think addiction and access to decriminalized drugs, it's not the reason. And I always tell everybody, hey, hold on. There's not one reason. If there are 5,000 people on the street, there are 5,000 reasons, and there's 5,000 pain points of what we need to do to help them. Because I try and say, if they're on a street, we're not helping them by giving them a tent. And do you know we actually foster the behavior by handing out tents?
Oh, for sure.
It's
It's
the most cool thing.
Knowing a little bit something about addiction, it used to be like there was services like Al-Anon and things like that. So there would be addiction service, NA and AA, but then there was Al-Anon, and that was anybody who had a family member or loved one or something that was addicted. They needed treatment too, because enabling was one of the hardest things for somebody who loves somebody who's addicted to stop doing, right? Because there had to be a bottom, and you can't make the decision for those folks. And so Keith, my question for you though is, because there are advocates on the other side, that wanted to, decriminalize drugs and saying they need treatment, not jail. But it used to be like jail was the rock bottom that you hit, right?
And that's
and
where
then
treatment was.
Right, and drug court, and there was sort of mandated stuff. It's how do those two live together? Because they're like, oh, jail doesn't work, but it feels like that we're empowering them, enabling them, then to just behave however they want until they wake up.
Yeah.
You
Personal autonomy is that key word we're looking at. I hear that a lot. So somebody struggling from mental health, that it's 20 degrees out and they don't have shoes walking across the street.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't help them.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we're a lost society.
Right.
And so, but let's get back to that core thing. You're saying, let me parse that question, Fawn. And you're saying, how do we help those individuals? Or you're talking about how do we help them inside?
There's a dual resistance here. We all want law and order back in our communities. We want the sheltered people, the unsheltered people shelter.
Yeah.
But then there's always this other side of, the social service side that just says like, leave us alone.
Yes.
We'll handle our own problems. Like that's, discipline is no way to
I get that. Hey,
respond to a
question.
question.
If somebody doesn't want to come into the shelter?
Right.
Are you going to force them? No,
Yeah.
we're not going to. But that's a good point. But we're taking away the tents, and I can tell you, rock bottom is really hard when you're living on the concrete without a tent. I tell you, Fawn, we're fostering addiction when we hand out tents and let somebody live next to their dealer.
Right.
So my neighbor across the street, she lives downtown next to the Greyhound shelter in a tent. The 30-year-old, wonderful lady. And her dealer is in the next tent. She keeps a bed at the Greyhound station too. She doesn't stay there. So she's taking away 2 beds in Portland. She sleeps in the tent, and she keeps the bed at the shelter away from somebody who may want it. But because we don't enforce you sleeping in the bed, we allow her to do that. Now, aren't we fostering that when we hand her the tent? And now the city's going to come by and sweep her, and the county's going to hand her a tent the next day, and the behavior's going to continue. So I want Elizabeth to hit rock bottom. I'm taking the tent away from my neighbor. Her 10-year-old daughter's across the street. I see the 10-year-old daughter.
Yeah, you're bringing the bottom up.
I'm taking away the tent because I want Elizabeth back home.
Yeah.
Because rock bottom is part of that recovery. I don't want her to go to jail.
Yeah.
I just want her to recognize her addiction, and she wants to. We tried to get her into Hooper on January 1st. But because she went right back to her tent and the dealer, the fentanyl was such a draw for her.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, when you allow that person to be in a tent and you're fostering it by handing her another tent and then sweeping her and then putting the dealer next to her, even if we offered her housing, she won't take it because you're taking her away from
The dealer.
Yeah. It's really empowering. And you're right. Some people will say, but if they want to be in a tent, let them be in a tent. And I say, absolutely not. It's against our law.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've created a lawless community and a law-abiding community, and we're all paying the price.
Okay, let's
Hey,
make
Keith,
this is a long show, so we want
that's
to
okay,
we
but
want to
it's
shift
not.
to some other topics
yeah,
too.
I am, and I'm about to shift it right now.
Everybody, I appreciate the robust conversation.
No,
Yes.
no.
I'm running for mayor. I want people to kick a tire.
Exactly.
Make sure
Yes.
Exactly.
Make
And that-
sure I got a plan and test it and try it because
Keith.
we need to get back to
Keith, and this is the part I'm admiring about you, man, because you roll your sleeves up.
Absolutely.
And you get in it. But here's a scenario for you though that I'd like you to somehow or another, let's transition into that bridge. And in light of all the innovation and the ingenuity and your ability to go under the covers and be involved, but you got a handicap coming on, right? And that is that the form of government that we use have historically used in Portland is about to change. And if it's selected mayor, you come into that seat, you're going to come into a lot of turbulence, a lot of confusion, a lot of gestation time. And you got these high priority issues that you're facing. How are you going to navigate that coming in with a new type of government, being a new mayor, understanding some of these principles, but what are you going to bring to this chaos that's going to be ensued? Because the gestation period for a new government at least going to be 24 months at least to be able to get it honing. So how are you going to navigate that and actually try to address some of these high priority issues that you have also?
All right. Well, first of all, I'm not a failed leader, John. So if we hire a mayor who's already failed, are we going to really expect a different outcome by giving him a different job? I own and operate a 24-hour complex, highly efficient, high-performing business. Don't we want somebody who already knows how to stay up at night and deal with emergencies when they occur and be able to address it quickly? That's what I bring. Now let's talk about the city, the new form of government. Nobody has experience in Portland running this new form of government. The mayor now is the central figure in running the operations of the city. And it's set up just like my business. I have a chief operating officer. We have a city administrative officer that's going to be operating the day-to-day operations, and that person will report to me. And then we're going to have 6 deputy city administrative officers. Those are like vice presidents, like what I have currently. The top down is very similar. But John, here's the exciting part of that. I know how to run individual departments, but I also have my executive meeting every Friday, and I have a complex system of green-red. And Alex, you'll know what I'm talking about there. Green-red.
Yeah.
I set up far-reaching yet achievable goals for each one of my vice presidents and my directors. And they hit those goals. And if not, they're presenting red to me on Friday. Red means it's out of tolerance. The hardest part about running a high-performing business is setting far-reaching yet achievable goals. That's the hardest part. You don't walk in and start firing people. You start changing the culture, but you start treating them like adults, like high-performing individuals, and giving them the tools to perform. But here's the most exciting part. Nobody's done this before. All of our commissioners have been mini mayors to point, and they've wanted to isolate their budgets and fight, and I don't want to interplay with you. Here's what changes. Not only do I manage the business vertically, top down, that's right, Alex, I get horizontal control. So now, interdisciplinary communication between each one of the departments. So think about our permitting. It takes 8 to 18 months to just deliver one permit for a building, for an office conversion or a thing like that. So now I get to put together a team, a strike team, a permitting strike team that works throughout the horizontal and say, okay, if Calgary's able to deliver a office conversion to residential and it takes 2 months, I say, hold on, everybody. We're not going to be the highest performing city in the nation yet. You get 4 months. Find the bottlenecks, address the systems, and improve. Far-reaching goal. You're going from 8 months to 4 months. Not what the best practice is in the nation, which is 2. Don't set people up for failure. Set them up to succeed. And then once they succeed and they maintain, you reset the goals, right? And you always make it far-reaching. You're going to always raise. That's how great performing businesses succeed. John, I know how to manage a high-performing enterprise that's safety-centric, that's service delivery to people. And it's about empowering people. It's not about walking in and carrying a big bat. You do what I say or I'm going to fire you. Absolutely not. It's changing the culture of our city that's focused on service and delivery, quality, safety, and sustainability.
Well, it looks like he stuck that landing.
Yeah,
Because I mean, right before John asked,
yeah, 9.5.
John asked that question, you just completely made it obvious how incompetent our city was prior to this. I'm sorry, I have to say it like that, right? I mean, some of the things you're
you
talking
said it
about.
like that.
Alex, I will tell you, I admire Bud Clark. I admire Vera Katz. It's the individuals we have. It's not the form of government, because with 5 city commissioners, they could all agree on something and get something done. They aren't, though. They aren't collaborating together to move our city. In the face of 400 people dying this year on the street, we're acting like it's business as usual.
Well, Keith, and just for the sake of time, let's transition to another topic for a minute. In speaking of business as usual, I got to thinking, when Bud Clark and Vera Katz, Portland was a different city back then, right? We didn't have these issues, and we didn't need to advertise, work for us, right? Because in fact, I think people were like, keep Portland weird. We don't want all this stuff, right? Because so many people saw it as so attractive, right? The beauty, I agree with you. I've been all over the world too, and it's as beautiful here as it is in some of the most beautiful places. But your CEO approach, we were looking at all the mayoral candidates' websites, and, they had their policy. Then we look at your website, and you've got your real change for Portland. Then you've got your topics, and then you click on your topics, and you got subtopics. Then you click on those subtopics, and you got subtopics. So, you definitely have an organized plan. So talk about us. Let's grow Portland together. What does that look like?
Okay.
Tired of high gas prices? Save money on your transportation costs with TriMet's reduced fare transit card. If you meet income requirements, you can get your first month free while you enjoy unlimited rides on buses and trains anywhere TriMet goes. That's 1 month free, a $28 value when you sign up today for TriMet's reduced fare card. We'll help you travel smarter and make your money go further no matter what the price is at the pump. Visit TriMet.org/save to learn more and apply today. That's TriMet.org/save. TriMet. How life moves.
I love the question. Thank you, Fawn. We really want to address unsheltered homelessness. I get that. But let's talk about Portland. How do we grow Portland? We've lost about 25,000 people in the last 4 years. We're not growing Portland. People are fleeing Portland.
Yes.
Our education system is being really impacted because every family takes $13,500 out of our education system. Cutbacks. So we don't grow our city unless we're growing people and families coming here. Our businesses are fleeing, Fawn. We're at 30% vacancy rate downtown. I just came from the Central East Side Industrial Council. That's where I was speaking this morning. And they were telling me about the cost of security. They have security. They have a paramilitary force down in the Central East Side because they can't utilize the police. You're not going to grow our city when we're feeling unsafe, unprotected, a transportation system that isn't good. That's why we end unsheltered homelessness. We restore public safety. So do you know a police officer's response time 10 years ago was 6 minutes. Today it's 24.
Yeah.
So by ending unsheltered homelessness, we restore our public safety system, and then we get out of the way. And you're right. Keep Portland Weird was a way to keep businesses from coming into some degree because it was such a beacon. Everybody wanted to be in Portland.
Yeah.
As mayor, I'm your biggest cheerleader. but we got to fix Portland next year. We do it in 12 months, Alex, because we can't wait. We can't add another 900 unsheltered people to the street.
Okay, so
right?
let's say that's done. Let's
It's
say
done.
that works
Okay.
in 12 months. Then how are we growing Portland together? What are we doing? What's the plan?
And specifically the small business development, because we recognize that 80% or more of the revenue that comes into Portland is from taxes, right, and small business. But yet, since Nike has moved out of our district, a number of things have occurred. As the businesses continue to put pocket listings and suspend from investing any more money into the community, look, we're at sort of one of the worst times that we've had in our district since the history.
And
since its history.
With that, 12 months, you fix that first problem. Who's in charge of attracting anchor tenants and commerce and business? We had the CHIPS Act. That was a pretty big deal, right? We're a pretty big deal in the CHIPS thing in technology.
Right.
Who currently, in your understanding, is in charge of attracting people to Portland to stay, and what would you do as mayor to impact that?
That's a great question. So remember, as your mayor, it's two sides of a coin. We talked about the operational side, right? The other side is the inspirational side. I'm the biggest cheerleader for bringing businesses here, but the city has all these empty buildings. Imagine our downtown core with one building at 20% occupancy, and we get a Google or an Amazon that wants to have a block of buildings. We are now the innovation hub, Fawn. We are creative with our brokers. We're creative with our city, and we need to activate those storefronts. So let's talk about storefronts. How do we get people here? Do you know in Portland, if you want to come to Portland and activate a storefront, oftentimes you have to do curbside development. So you want to open a building and you get a bill for your permit and you owe $100,000 to update the curb.
Right.
Now let's try this, but let's not just talk about outside business. Let's talk about people who have stayed in Portland and want to stay in Portland. You have a business downtown, a storefront, and you want to renovate because you want to grow your business.
Yeah.
It's $100,000 to do your renovation. We'll
Yeah.
hit you with $100,000 for curbside development. In Seattle, it's like $6,000. How do we engage people? We have a rational group of permits. We get it done quick. We don't overcharge, and then we get out of the way. Because Portland sells itself, but we got to clear and clean the streets, deliver basic services, and then have permitting and expenses that are rational and reasonable and helping businesses to come to Portland and build their business here. But we gotta deliver the basics of, we gotta provide safety. We can't have people living on the street, and we gotta be able to clean the streets. Basic blocking and tackling first, Fawn. That's where the operations.
Blocking and tackling, John.
Yeah, well, he got me dead to the right on that one.
So I hope that answered your question. But as far as inspiration, I'll be a part of the League of Cities and Mayors. We are going to absolutely crush it. Because look at all the open offices we have downtown. Portland's always been.
Well, and Keith and I appreciate it downtown, but we're in Northeast Portland. We have a major corridor right now, the MLK corridor, right? We have a lot of. This is a historic place in Northeast Portland called the Soul District, where at one point it was the only place where African Americans could own homes or businesses, and still to this day it headquarters some of the biggest Black-centric development projects. Of course, you know about the historic I-5 Rose Quarter project, which is spawning off a plan for Albina Vision Trust. Pathway 1000 and the Williams and Russell CDC are working together to, put 20 homeowners in inner Northeast Portland, Black Business Cultural Hub. You've got PCRI here, and they're doing Pathway 1000, putting 1,000 displaced African Americans back into affordable housing and 800 homeowners over the next 10 years. And then you've got the work that the Soul District is doing. But right now, the MLK corridor is just stacked and packed with affordable housing. And a lot of the way the housing was built was they did not allow commercial spaces to be at the ground floor because it increased the prevailing wage. So it would cost an extra $1 million to build these projects. So a lot of them skipped it. A few of them did it, but a lot of them skipped it. But as you said, we also have tenant issues. But over here, as John alluded, is Nike factory store pulled out.
That's right.
And that took out 6 million foot traffic people a year visiting that store. We've got other major buildings here that people want out. They want to move to Florida. They're gone. They're sick of county. They're sick of the city. So we're neither investing, and yet they're not 100% divesting either. So we need radical plans. The South Waterfront came together for Portland, and it's all shiny and new and stuff, and that probably can attract. And I get downtown has its features, but what are we doing for these outdoor skirts for folks like us that are that are on major corridors?
All right, Fawn, he's got to let him answer that question.
Okay.
No.
Well, first of all, and let's not forget the Jefferson High School remodel as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great things. This is a generational opportunity we have here.
Yeah.
And then also the Albina Vision Trust and what they're working on for that whole corridor as well.
Yeah, to have also, yeah.
Yeah, it's a chance for us to re-envision this whole community and make this the epicenter of Portland in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
So, but Vaughn, it goes back to our city's dying. People are leaving. Let's not walk. Vaughn, I'm the biggest cheerleader for Portland, and I'm a really good salesperson when I believe and I'm passionate about something that's doing well. But you can't sell anything when it's dying and failing, and when you have Nike moving out and sending the message, when we can't even keep a McDonald's in a particular area or neighborhood. I mean, that's your barometer of fail. So I don't want to get over my skis on this one. Yes, economic development is very important. Yes, transforming our transportation system. Yes, placemaking for the Soul District is very important. But if people feel unsafe, and if our reputation around the nation and the world is that if you go to Portland, they're on fire, what are you doing? That's crazy. We know different.
Yeah. So, Keith,
Okay.
wait,
No,
last
no.
question for me, John.
No, you get no more questions
Hey.
to Keith. Keith's got to summarize right now.
Yeah, because I'm
Okay.
saying, you've never been elected before, have you?
I ran 4 years ago.
Oh, you
but
did?
My sister, who was addicted at the time, died right after I announced, so I was her caretaker, and then COVID happened, so I had to really pull back.
Okay.
Mingus Maps won that election, and he's a good friend along the path there. But I haven't won the city council, but I'm back as mayor because the homelessness and the pain in our is twice the level it was when I ran first.
So, Keith, in your campaign message, in your closing, what did you want your listeners to hear about your campaign and why they should select you as mayor?
All right. So I want a city where it's clean and well maintained. I want a city when I take my wife Catherine out for a meal in the Soul District. Matador, by the way, is our favorite. I like it.
Yeah,
It is. And then when I go out to El Sombrero for a chimichanga out on Park Rose area, right?
Yeah.
When I take her there, that I feel safe and I don't feel sick and tired of feeling sick and tired because I see 30 tents along the way and the misery that comes along with it. When I know that when I can call a police officer, or I know my children who are moving away from Portland want to come back, that's the city I want, and I want you to know that. And if you want that too, I'm asking you to join me. I have a plan. I have a vetted blueprint that has been reviewed by national leaders to end unsheltered homelessness. I have a record of success, and I'm asking you for your support. I'm asking your listeners for their support. We can do this, but isn't it amazing? Just caring for the most vulnerable in our community actually cares for everybody in the community.
Yeah.
So please join me along this journey.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. Look,
Yeah.
this has been a real exciting episode of PDX Black Rose. I'll tell you, Keith, I've been sitting with a lot of candidates lately. And like I said before, if you was a team that I had to compete against tomorrow, boy, I'd like to make sure that I'm on that blackboard and in them film sessions, probably until tomorrow's game, boy, because what's coming is some heat. And y'all, for any of you candidates out there, you better know something about something, because this gentleman here that's coming down the pike at you knows a little bit of something about a little something. And we're glad to have you here, Keith.
Absolutely.
And look here, Fawn, any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I think we've
Great
heard it all.
questions.
Just look forward to having you back closer to the election.
Hey, y'all scroll down, hit this button, and go subscribe to Flossin TV, because you're going to be receiving content like this throughout the next 6 months. And I'm here to tell you, it's going to be a little bit exciting. We'll have Keith back on here a little bit down as his campaign is moving forward. And we do appreciate you keep coming through the house, man,
Absolutely.
and sharing a little bit of your wisdom and insight. Yeah?
Absolute pleasure. John, thank you for your community leadership. Fawn, great questions. I appreciate it. And Alex, it's really great to be on the show with all of you.
Yeah, we
Thank
appreciate you. Thank you very much, Keith. Yeah. This episode is done.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Is it done now?
But not for
Wait,
you. It's
now
never
this
gonna be done.
episode
Great
is complete.
conversation. I appreciate it.